Well, after getting over a cold and thinking about the above videos there, I am back with a new recording. This, of course, being another AI video. Probably the last time I'm going to do one unless something else comes up that is unique, because this is a very unique situation that Casey Simpson talking about. People are marrying their AI now. Now, I'll be honest, this is nothing new to me. Not only am I familiar with how years ago people were parasocial with their video games and characters like Hatsune Miku. Of course, though, you can't do that with VTubers, of course, because there's an actual person behind the model here. But yeah, like when it comes to those that have no character, no person behind it, I mean, I've seen the same thing with Bridges and even characters from the Cars franchise. Do not look those up. You'll probably be questioning things like I have questioned things. And of course, though, this is like nothing new, seeing how like almost a century ago, give or take, there was a mannequin named Cynthia that people were parasocial over as well. So much so that when said model broke, there were actual newspaper obituaries. So yeah, that was a thing that happened. Now, like I said, this is nothing new to me, and in a sense, this is a follow-up to a bunch of other videos I've done. My 3 cynicism videos, the third one, of course, being 3 a.m. and lonely video. This is also a follow-up to my video on when I talked about Idiocracy and Paranoia Agent. And this is also akin to what I spoke of when I mentioned what I refer to as the freethinker's trap. So, with all that said, what am I rambling about? All right, so the thing that is very unique that Casey brought up with the referencing of news stories is that one, you have like the one woman said that she prefers an AI partner because humans are difficult to deal with. And I think that has more to do with what I had said in previous videos about cynicism. You know, people are in disbelief that humanity can be kind, can be sincere, can be genuine. And so with this distrust, I should be saying, with this distrust towards the human condition, some people have no hope in humanity, don't believe that there can be any sort of kindness or sincerity, and so they turn to AI, you know. But then there's something else that Casey pointed out, another news story, in which case you have a guy who has a girlfriend, has a daughter, but when he's not spending time with his family, he is spending time with an AI, having a synthetic relationship. And this perplexed me a bit. And I was trying to figure out, like, what could be the deal? Like, what would his friends say? But then that gave me more thinking about it, you know, considering what other people have said in the past about synthetic relationships. I mean, I already went over this, like I said in previous videos, in relation to like when Bennett the Sage talked about Video Girl I. Like I said, for reference with in relation to this video, listen to the nuts and bolts one where he talks behind the scenes about his video. Because that's like one perspective, and another one is many years ago, when Gaijin Goomba was still new and did his video on synthetic relationships. You know, yeah, I think it's like 8 or 9 years ago, give or take. So there was that as well. And of course, likewise, as I said in my previous videos, what I've learned, what's been spoken of by Leanna Kersner, Leanna K, what she's brought up quite a few times about what men have been dealing with and stuff like that, and social pressures towards both men and women. So there's that. As well as a woman whose channel is Shoe on Head, talks about some of the curious directions people go when they don't trust other people anymore. You know, what do men do about their loneliness, and what do women do about their loneliness. So yeah, I actually got to learn a whole lot of different things from different people, different perspectives, and what other people had found out about. Now, the funny thing is that another person that said quite a lot, and I'm surprised I didn't get a lot of videos from him, but when I decided to look back into it, who was talking about virtual influencers, Jarvis Johnson of the channel Jarvis Johnson Gold. Not only with me watching one of his video on virtual influencers again, because I talked about this another video when talking more about the difference between virtual influencers and VTubers. The short of it is that the virtual influencer, it's just a mascot. Anyone can just play this character and that's it. Whereas the VTuber, it's like you take this character and the actor, performer, whatever behind the character is basically projecting through it to give this character life, kind of like what I'm doing in this video. But the thing is, VTubers and other live streamers and content creators have a tendency, and there's only minor differences that strict content creators like myself don't stream, though I am thinking of doing that. But yeah, that's beside the point. And I've spoken of this before, like I said, where a lot of people like to put the blame on these as to why there's this problem with people getting into synthetic relationships, people becoming parasocial and stuff like that. Despite the fact that, like I said, this has happened at least 100 years ago, as is the case with the mannequin Cynthia. But there were also other things, because Jarvis Johnson actually talked about the same thing that Casey is talking about. As put there, cheating on your wife with AI, and people are marrying their AI. And Jarvis goes over a lot of other stories as well, and between what the stories Casey covered and stories that Jarvis covered, this is a bigger thing than I realized. But I have come to realize something else, because there's always the thought of, why would you have a synthetic relationship when you already have someone who could be the love of your life? So cynicism isn't really playing into it as much when it comes to those people. But I do notice something else, which is the fact that a lot of these people, see, they don't have what's called a third space. You have your home space, you have your workspace, and then you have the third place, in which case you hang out with friends and stuff like that. And in instances where people don't have a third space, like myself, you get a hobby. So if you don't have a third space and you have a hobby. But the thing is, another thing that I noticed, which is again why I made mention of Leanna Kay and Shoe on Head, is the fact that a lot of people tend to be shamed for it. And yeah, there's a whole thing of guys being shamed because of the reckless and disgusting behavior of other men. But there's also the same thing that happens to women as well, such as constant slut shaming, which unfortunately is a thing that is constantly happening within the VTuber space as well. Because, oh my God, they want a model that looks good, but then people are like, oh, well, you're attracting perverts and man, and it's like, and it's funny because some people think that if you do the shaming and bullying and whatnot, it would fix the problem. But I am convinced that this is actually making the problem worse, because people feel like they can't engage in what they enjoy anymore. And so what happens is that they either cut themselves out of whatever hobbies and personal interests they have in favor of something else. And I think this secret shame is where it pushes people into doing ridiculous things, such as dating chatbots. They claim to be married to these fictional characters, something that has no human behind it, just because they feel like they are unwelcome in society. And I think that's where a lot of this comes from. Of course, though, finding information about this is difficult, which is also why I put that video on the bottom there. Why is YouTube recommending these AI channels? And I actually spoke a bit of this in my 3 a.m. and Lonely video as well, where a lot of times you will get recommended these really stupid and weird and at times asinine videos. And instead of engaging in a healthy habit, healthy activity, unfortunately, these channels, these slop channels, as many of us call them, can lead into some bad negative habits. And honestly, it's not just YouTube. Like, I do go to other platforms, and I see this on other platforms, some of which I even stopped going to because there was just so much slop, and it's hard to find anything that's genuine. So that is another thing, because the internet used to be a great place as an alternative. Like, you didn't have a hobby, you didn't have a third place to hang out with friends and whatnot. At least you had the internet. But because of how things have changed, especially with the excess of slop that's going on, I mean, granted, we had slop in the past, such as that one with the characters of Azumanga Daioh blowing up. And we all know which which Care Bear reject I'm talking about. But if you don't worry about it, you'll probably be completely disturbed by that web comic anyways. But yeah, we did have slop in the past, but at least a person created it. At least it took time for something that come out. Instead, people just have it mass produced through machines, and it just floods the system, and it becomes difficult to find anything interesting. And some people do end up developing unhealthy habits because of this slop. And unfortunately, we do see this with the children. When children come across it, and when children end up becoming brain rotted, which is another thing that Casey had talked about in his past videos. And I think that's where we are having these problems. There is no healthy outlet that acts as like a third space or a hobby or whatever. Instead, people feel ashamed to engage in something they genuinely enjoy, so they shut themselves away from whatever that space is or that hobby or whatever. And we end up with situations where you have a guy whose life is just work, hang out with his family, and then either doom scroll or waste time on a chatbot. And as I said in previous videos, I do doubt there's any artificial intelligence, seeing how, well, as Casey put himself, there's just a lot of ad-libbing. Of course, like I said, some people would say that it's because of modern conveniences. But honestly, if it was a modern thing, then there was no way that a mannequin named Cynthia would have been as popular as that was. Nor would there have been any instances where people would favor their favorite book character over having actual relationships. This was a thing that happened in the past as well. I forgot what the term was for it, but there was a special word for people who just stuck with their fictional relationships that are in books rather than talking with actual people, rather than actually socializing. And it is clear that the problem is only getting worse. And I actually think a lot of part of this is the bullying and the shaming. After all, there is that thing called the introversion of sacrifice, which I talked of in previous videos. Of course, though, that could just be more of a conjecture thing or whatever. But either way, those are my thoughts in relation to this situation. So, I am Austin of the channel NecoAV, and I thank you for watching.